Theater, a podcast that doesn't give a shit about spoilers. We just want to talk about the movies. My name is Megan Kearns. My pronouns are she, her. I write film reviews for Edge Media Network. I'm a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association, and I'm a member of Gallica, the Society of LGBTQ Entertainment Critics.
My name is Dave Riedel. My pronouns are he, him. I write for the Chicago Reader, and I am also a member of Boston Online Film Critics Association.
Yes.
It's a lot of words each week.
Indeed. My name is Evan Crean. I'm co-chair of the Boston Online Film Critics Association and co-author of your 80s Movie Guide to Better Living. My pronouns are he, him.
All right. Well, this week, like every week, we have movies. But before we dive into this week's new releases, we want to tell you about our bonus episode. If you are a patron, go check it out. And if you're not a patron, consider joining for $5 a month. This week, it's the winner of our LGBTQ plus movie poll in honor of Pride Month. And the winner was The Adventures of Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. And we had a really great conversation talking about it. So, like I said, go check it out if you can.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And I also, at this time, want to take the opportunity to thank our sponsor piece patron, Heather Sachs. Heather, thank you so much for all your support.
Thank you.
Thanks, Heather.
And on to the new releases. So this week, we are going to be talking about Nimona and Everybody. So we're going to kick things off with Nimona, which is a sci-fi fantasy animated adventure film. And it is based on the graphic novel by N.D. Stevenson, who also was the creator and showrunner of She-Ra and the Princesses of Power. And It's directed by Nick Bruno and Troy Quayne, and written by Robert L. Baird and Lloyd Taylor. So here is the synopsis from Netflix. When a knight in a futuristic medieval world is framed for a crime he didn't commit, the only one who can help him prove his innocence is Nimona, a mischievous teen who happens to be a shape-shifting creature he's sworn to destroy. So this premiered at Annecy International Animation Film Festival just a few weeks ago on June 14th, and it stars the voice acting of Riz Ahmed and Chloe Grace Moretz as Nimona, that's Chloe Grace Moretz, and Ballister Boldheart, Riz Ahmed.
Mm-hmm.
All right, guys, what did you think of Nimona?
Evan, why don't you go?
Oh, okay. I really like this movie. It gave me very serious Wolfwalkers vibe.
Yes.
But I really liked it. I thought it was cute, sweet. I really thought the stop animation and art direction was really interesting. I like the idea of a futuristic yet medieval world. I thought that made for a lot of cool settings and technology and situations. I thought that Nimona was a really cool character. I love that she was into rock music and always saying about how things were metal. And when she was in her action scenes, it always had this like awesome rock music going. And her shape-shifting was really, really cool. Kind of was giving me Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves vibes as well. Totally. With all the shape-shifting action scenes and chases and the way she could morph from all different sizes of creatures, or when she was the whale just smashing through all kinds of things. I thought that was just a hilarious creature. Or the rhino when she first meets him and she's got the pictures, their picture resume that she's giving him as to why they should team up. And there's the rhino spearing guards, and then that scene comes to fruition very shortly thereafter.
I love the picture resume.
Yeah, I thought it was great. So I thought this was really cute and sweet, and I love a story about outsiders teaming up and, characters getting to know each other that normally would be enemies, and understanding that they have a lot in common and finding humanity in each other. I just think that's really sweet.
All right, Dave, what did you think?
Didn't really work for me so much. And that's not really because of anything that's on screen. I kind of feel like there's some stuff missing from it. I think the way you get dropped into the action so quickly I don't really think it's detrimental necessarily, but I just would have liked to have. I mean, Nimona's a great character, and I just would have liked to have seen more of her. You do get that kind of extended flashback about 2/3 of the way through. But I think I would have liked even more of that because it was really compelling. And unfortunately, and I know this isn't really the point, but unfortunately, the central mystery was really, really easy to figure out. So I did appreciate the bit when it comes up twice when Nimona says, and I'm paraphrasing, you two are going to have to help me out with this. She says, sometimes,
I know
most of the time everyone wants to kill me, and sometimes I want to let them.
Yes,
and then
yes, that is
and
what
then she
says.
does try to kill herself at the end. You think that the implication is that she's going to destroy the futuristic past town, but she's actually going to spear herself on the statue of, is it Glorith? Is that the first ruler?
To stop the cannon? Yes.
Yeah. Who apparently Nimona knew. So I thought that was pretty compelling stuff. But I think it shifted so much tonally from like manic comedy to serious drama to action adventure. It didn't really, I just thought tonally it didn't work for me as well as obviously it did for Evan. But I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just not it's not how, I mean, you know how I feel about animated movies generally. And I think a lot of them, in my view, kind of suffer from this, like tonally not being able to figure out what they are or wanting to be everything. And I don't know if that's the case here, but it felt that way to me. So, but I think Chloe Grace Moretz and Riz Ahmed were both really good, especially her.
Yes.
And it's kind of interesting that sometimes I could tell that it was she doing the voice, and other times she didn't sound like Chloe Grace Moretz at all.
Right.
So I thought that was a neat little thing that was probably intentional, I'm guessing. And I don't know. And there's like a, queer romance at the center of it too, which I don't think I've ever seen in an animated movie, which I think is some studio took a pass on this because of that. I don't remember which one it was.
Oh, well, I actually know the history of the entire film, so I could tell you. It's not that a studio took a pass on it per se. So this was Blue Sky Studios, which was owned by Fox. And then when Disney bought Fox, they acquired Blue Sky Studios, and then this film kept getting delayed. This was originally supposed to come out in like 2020, and it kept getting delayed. Wow. It kept getting pushed back, and then Disney scrapped it, and they're like, nope, this is not coming out. We're not doing it. And then some animators said, the movie's 70% done. This is heartbreaking that we've done so much work on this to just have it scrapped. And then other animators came out and said that they got a lot of pushback on the queer storylines from Disney. So then Annapurna picked it up and released it through Netflix, and it was resuscitated, thankfully. And everybody who had originally worked on it, like the original voice cast, came back, and there was a previous director, but kind of midway through that, the two directors who directed it now, they had started taking on directing duties, so they came back to finish it. So yeah, so it ended up being finished, thankfully, and released. But yeah. So, so Disney didn't pass on it, but they definitely did push back and definitely scrapped it, essentially. So, which I think is, that might be what you're thinking, but I think it's really interesting, speaking of that with the queer themes, because, Strange World just came out, which has a queer main character, and Luca is a queer allegory. So I think, there's more and more queer characters coming in Disney films, but anyway.
Well, I like how the official Disney line is that Luca is not a queer story. It's like, really? Are we sure?
That's what the filmmaker says.
I think you need to rewatch that, Disney execs.
I agree. I think it's the queerest of the queer films, but
well, yeah, and Disney likes their ambiguously queer. They don't like outwardly, like in this film. Very early on, Ambrosius, is that his name? He says to Ballister, "That's why I love you," and grabs his hand, and they,
and
are very tender with each other.
Off.
Yeah, And then they kiss later in the movie. So
Yes, they do.
Disney doesn't usually like any of that, very explicit queerness. We like ambiguous stuff.
Right.
Not because of the animators, though, because so many of the animators are queer that work at Disney, which I think is interesting. And many lyricists have been and directors. But yes, unfortunately, it's the studio execs who often are like, no. So you're right on that, Evan, which is very frustrating. Very frustrating. And that's why there's so much queer coding put into Disney films because of that as a reaction to it. But yes, but that was, the queer storyline as far as the queer central romance between Ballister and Ambrosius, that was there from the start because that's also in the graphic novel. I don't know if it's as explicit in the graphic novel, but it is there. So yeah, so that was in it right from the start, which probably made Disney very nervous because it is so explicit. Because being familiar with N.D. Stevenson's work, N.D. Stevenson is a transmasculine queer person, and he puts his queerness into his work and has from the start. So yeah, anyway. But yes, before I share what I think of this, Dave, did you have anything else you wanted to say? I don't want to cut you off.
Oh, I was just going to say maybe that's why it feels disjointed because of all the stops and starts. I don't know. And the change of directors and etc. I don't know. That's it.
Okay. Well, this is not going to come as any shock. I fucking loved this. I adored this movie. I can't wait to watch it again. I was laughing through this. I was crying through this. I was crying uncontrollably at the end. I was crying during that great flashback, Dave, that you talked about with Glorith and with Nimona. And just to kind of flesh out a little, because I realized the synopsis doesn't really give so much about what this is about. If you haven't seen this, so the whole society is based on Glorith, who was a knight and then trained all these knights to kind of protect the realm from monsters. And it's 1,000 years later. And so Nimona is a creature that's been alive for 1,000 years. And she was friends with Glorith. And Ballister was a knight. But the surprising thing about him was that he wasn't born into the elite families of knights. He was a commoner. And the queen, voiced by the excellent actress Lorraine Toussaint, who also does Shadow Weaver and She-Ra, and I love Lorraine Toussaint, and I love that there's a little nod to She-Ra there. And the queen is like, oh, Ballister's great. I know his heart. He's a good person. He's going to be a great knight. And but then there's a whole conspiracy, and he ends up killing her, but it's not really him. It's his sword that kills her. And then he gets his arm chopped off by his lover Ambrosius because he thinks he's trying to protect the queen, but she's already dead. And the whole plot is because of the director, who is incredibly narrow-minded and thinks that no commoners should become knights, and we need to protect the realm at all costs, even if it means murdering civilians and murdering queens and
the
whatnot.
queen.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, murdering civilians.
Frances
and queens.
Conroy, right?
It is Frances Conroy, yes. And that's how I knew. I was like, that was the big tip off. I'm like, oh, this person's evil because it's Frances Conroy. I knew it. Sometimes voice casting, or regular casting gives things away. But that was okay. I didn't care. I loved Ballister and Nimona's friendship so much. And I love, not only is Ballister queer, but Nimona's shapeshifting is such a great allegory for gender fluidity, and the fact that Ballister is constantly trying to ask her these really invasive questions, and she's like, those are small questions, why are you asking me? And he's like, why don't you just be a girl? That would be easier. And she's like, for whom? And and it's a great question because she's right. Is that easier for him? Easier for society? And I think the description of how she feels itchy, or right before her sneeze, if she doesn't shapeshift often enough, I think is a really fascinating, tangible description of how she feels. And then when she does shapeshift, she feels that she's free and she can truly be herself. And I love that. And I also really love it in this whole notion that she's a monster, but she's not a monster, because throughout the history of horror specifically, monsters have been queer coded. So often queer audiences have an affinity for monsters because they're the outsiders. They're the ones who are persecuted by, the villagers or what have you. And Nimona is a really great kind of depiction of that. but it's also taking these fairy tale tropes and notions and kind of, shifting them a bit, which is something I really love that N.D. Stevenson does, that the filmmakers, I think, do a great job in adapting his work. But yeah, I just loved this. I loved the voice acting. I love the banter between Ballister and Nimona. I love the animation. I just adored this. I thought this was absolutely wonderful. I cannot say enough good things about this. Can't wait to watch it again. Loved it.
Yeah.
Loved everything about
I hear
it.
ya.
And I'm sorry that you didn't have that experience, Dave. I feel bad because I know animation is not usually your cup of tea, but I hear you what you're saying about the tonally jarring elements, and that works for me, but I can understand why it would be kind of off-putting or just doesn't connect for you. I get it.
Yeah, it's strange. I mean, there are a lot of studios who, and I'm talking like mainstream studios because I don't know all the studio. What's the anime movie that we watched about the kite service? What was it? What's the name?
Kiki's Delivery Service?
Oh,
Kiki's Delivery Service.
Studio Ghibli.
Which was just such a delight. And I
Yes.
feel like that is a great example. And I've people have told me that's one of the lesser Ghibli movies. All right, fine.
It is. It's a fluffy Ghibli movie. The others are kind of gutting.
Yeah, but I mean, that's an example of a movie that sort of like toes the line of tone perfectly.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think another movie that does that, and I can't believe I'm going to say this, is Ratatouille. I think Ratatouille kind of
Ratatouille's great.
Tonally perfect. Yeah, but whenever you bring up Pixar, people are like,
Listen, I love Pixar, so I'm not mad.
yeah,
that
I
you
don't
brought up Ratatouille.
dislike Pixar. I mean, if I never saw Monsters Inc. or Monsters University or Cars or Planes, then fine.
Oh, I love Monsters Inc. I love Boo and Sully.
Now, you have to
Anyway.
know why that movie rubs me the wrong way. Billy Crystal.
Oh,
I was
Billy
gonna say,
Crystal. I
Billy
was like,
Crystal has
Closet
gotta be
Doors?
it.
I forgot
No.
you only like him in When Harry Met Sally.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Oh, no, Running Scared also. I like him in Running Scared.
Okay.
Anyway,
Good to know.
so I feel like those movies are, like, for example, I said Ratatouille, Kiki's Delivery Service. The tone of those is much more consistent, and it plays up the comedy at the right place and plays up the drama at the right place. And I feel like a lot of other studios, they're kind of just like, it's almost like, let's just do everything we ever wanted to do in an animated movie that we haven't been able to do when we used to work for the fucking, whatever is at Disney. I don't know. And, I think a lot of times the storytelling isn't as good. I don't hesitate to use the word good because so many people like animated movies that are different from Disney movies. But,
Yeah.
yeah. But I mean, even Disney movies, like you just heard me say, is like, oh, fucking Monsters Inc. Jesus. I don't want to understand any of that shit. So, and like, I remember when I saw the trailer for Cars, I was like, nope, never going to see it. So, I think there are just some things I just don't like, but, yeah, I'm glad this worked for you,
Oh, it worked hard.
glad you took such joy in it, and that's just not to say, I don't think that anybody listening to this podcast should necessarily, unless they feel the same way about animation as I do, should really take my opinion about animation so seriously because it's just not my bag, So
I think that's a very, very open-minded and magnanimous view of yours. But I think you're 100% right. Certain genres, certain types of stories just don't work for, people. And I think that shows what a mature critic and person you are, that you can be like, that's just not for me, and that's okay. It doesn't have to be, because not everything
Thank
does
you.
have to be. You're welcome. But yeah, that's why I was like, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's a really nice, warm, fuzzy compliment. Thanks.
Yay! I love it. I'm so glad. Well, the movie didn't give you the warm fuzzy, so I will.
Okay, great. That's I'll take that trade-off. Great.
Yeah, this movie gave me all the warm fuzzies.
Yeah, me too. I really just had a lot of fun with this, and I think it had kind of a breakneck pacing for me, and
It really does, yeah.
The kind of pivoting between genres for me did work, but I think it's also because it helped keep my attention because it was kind of shifting between different styles and genres and tones.
It worked for me too, Evan. I'm with you. And I'm so glad that you mentioned wolf walkers earlier because that's all I could think of was wolf walkers.
Very similar vibes.
Yes. I'm like this is D&D meets wolf walkers meets a little bit of She-Ra sprinkled in. Yeah, like kind of all of
definitely
that.
a little bit of She-Ra going on here.
Yeah.
Although I feel like if this was She-Ra, there'd be a lot more queer people in this movie.
Oh,
a lot more queer
100%.
characters.
100%. But what I do like about this is that because at first, when you see Ballister and Ambrosius have like affection for each other, I was like, oh no, do they have to keep it hidden? And that's not the case at all. Like that is not a plot point at all, which is kind of refreshing. So I like that they're just, they're just in love and that's that.
Yeah. It seemed like maybe they keep it a little bit low key in the beginning because they're work colleagues.
Yes.
It seems like maybe they keep it a little bit,
Yes.
professional when they're in work situations. I would like to also add that Beck Bennett is hilarious as the like douchey other knight who's always trying to fuck shit up for them.
Yeah.
Perfect spot on casting there.
I love Beck Bennett. I've always, from the moment I first saw him on Saturday Night Live, I'm like, I love this guy. But I kind of think that character, not his performance, but that character is not the right character for what that needs. But that's me. I think that character needs to be more evil. But, what do I know? Instead of just douchey and kind of evil.
I think if you didn't, it's funny that you say that because I was thinking about that with the director and I was like, oh no, are they going to like pull the punches here and she's going to be not so bad in the end? But no, she's a
she's really
horrible
bad.
Monster. Yeah, she's the monster. So I'm kind of glad of that. But like, I hear you. If they didn't make her fully evil, I would have felt that way about Beck Bennett's character too. I would be like, no, we can't have this like half kind of jerk. Like, yeah, but I hear you. I want to circle back just for a moment about, Evan, what you were saying about how they kind of had to keep it quiet because they were colleagues. The thing that I loved, and it comes up a couple of times, is the fact, that Ballister creates a robotic arm because his arm is gone because of Ambrosius chopping it off in that moment when the queen is killed. And I love that Nimona, when he's like, it's complicated, when he's talking to Nimona about it. And she's like, chopping an arm off is not a love language. And I'm like, yes, I love that we're getting someone addressing that. Like that's really great. They didn't just brush it off. They didn't just sweep it under the rug. I love that.
But then they came back to that. Remember when Ambrosius was, the director asked Ambrosius, are you okay? And he has the whole freak out inside his head, which includes, I chopped his arm off. Chopping an arm off isn't a love language. I thought that was so funny.
It was so cute. I loved that too. I was like, yes, he gets it. Yeah. No, anyway. But I think what I love most, in addition to all of the queer themes, in addition to all of the sweet banter and the sweet connection between the two characters, is I love, like Evan, you started off by saying it was about outsiders, and I really like that that's kind of the central theme of the story, is about being outsiders and who's really a monster. And it's not maybe the most unique story because it's told in a lot of animated stories, but I think it's one that's important. It needs to be told again and again.
Totally. It's the kind of thing that kids should be seeing in their movies.
I agree.
There's reasons to talk to people who, and to get to know them and make your judgments after you get to know them, and not just, judge a book by its cover, as they say, to be cliche.
Yeah, sometimes cliches are cliche for a reason.
Yeah. One other thing I wanted to mention, which I think was kind of a fun theme between the three movies that we're talking about this week, is that in each of them, there are moments of celebration and queer joy between, when characters and Priscilla are dancing and laughing together. We get the dancing and, they're taking photos and goofing around in this one. And that one scene, they're taking all those Polaroids.
To Metric. I love Metric.
Yeah. And then we get a little bit of that in the next movie we're talking about too, of people like getting to celebrate and be joyful. And I just like that was a common thread in all three of the movies we're talking about this week.
Yes. I love that you mentioned that because, as queer people, got to take the joy where we can. All the Ridiculous persecution and oppression. So I love that you said that, Evan. And that is an excellent segue into our next film, which is the documentary Everybody by director Julie Cohen. And this is a very long synopsis from Focus Features, the studio that released it. So I'm just going to read the first couple of sentences. I think that will give a good overview, and then we can dig into our thoughts on the documentary. Everybody is a revelatory investigation of the lives of intersex people. The film tells the stories of 3 individuals who have moved from childhoods marked by shame, secrecy, and non-consensual surgeries to thriving adulthoods after each decided to set aside medical advice to keep their bodies a secret and instead come out as their authentic selves. All right. And that is true. And it follows 3 people. And they talk about their childhoods and they talk about their histories with their families and in, medical oppression and medical discrimination. And the film opens with gender reveal parties, which goddamn do I have fucking strong opinions about gender reveal parties. Spoiler alert, I hate them.
Hey, I'm right there with you.
Don't worry. I'm not
it.
doing one of those.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of those either.
I think it's an important way to kick off of this movie because it is so ubiquitous and gender reveal parties have really taken hold of our society in a way they hadn't before. Although it is the first question most people ask, when are you due? What are you having? If it's not the first question, it's the second question. And it's like, why? Why are we asking this question? We really need to examine that, I think, as a society. But anyway, and then another really important component of the film is talking about a historic case of a person who was changed against their will as a different gender, and they were not an intersex person, and they were raised as a girl, but he was a guy, and he came out later as a guy, and had all of this pain and problems, and it's a lot. But yes, so there's a lot of trauma and a lot of tragedy, but also a lot of joy. And to see 3 intersex people be so open about their lives and the activism that they're doing to have bills and advocate for bills that stop forced surgeries on intersex children is really, really important. So, guys, what did you think? Actually, Dave, since Evan started last time, let's start with you. What did you think?
Oh, I loved this. Once I got past the first 15 or 20 minutes, though, where I was almost physically sick because I thought this was going to be a documentary about persecution, which it is in a way. But I meant that the 3 main people that we're following, I thought we were going to hear, I was locked in a closet and, I don't know what I was thinking I was going to hear. But I was really upset for the first 15 minutes or so. And like you, I think that gender reveal parties, I'm not sure if this is, I'm not sure it's the dumbest fucking thing ever invented by people, but it's a top 5.
It feels pretty stupid when it starts a forest fire that destroys millions of dollars worth of people's property and homes.
Yeah. But also like why are you having, yeah, but also let's just forget about the fact that you can start a forest fire because you're stupid.
Right.
But I just don't understand. And I've got 2 children myself, as we are well versed in spoiler piece. And I just don't give a shit about the sex, gender, whatever of your child. I don't care. I don't want to know. It's just not of interest to me. And the idea that people freak out because it's just fucking, you're having a baby, just fucking take care of it. You're not going to be thinking about the baby's sex and or gender or whatever when it's keeping you awake at 3:00 in the morning because it's hungry. You're just how the fuck can I feed this thing? This, whatever it is.
This person.
Yeah.
But here's the thing you're absolutely 100% right, Dave. But here's the thing that's wild about that, because there've been numerous studies on this. People talk differently to babies. Babies are gendered. So they're gendered, socialized from a few months old. People talk
Mhm.
like to girls, they're like, "Oh, sweetie, cutie, how you doing?" And to boys, they're like, "Hey, little man, how's it going?" Like just that kind of difference socializes children differently. So
Boy,
people are
people would love to be in
clearly
my
thinking
house.
about it. Well, maybe they should be
Yeah.
living in your house.
Well, I call, and I'm a cis straight white dude, and I call my oldest child baby,
Oh, I love that.
and he's a little 8-year-old boy.
Well, Dave, that
And-
just goes to show what a good parent you are.
Well, it's just, I mean, he's such a sweetie baby,
He's
He's just
a sweetie baby.
he's just the sweetest kid, He doesn't have a mean bone in his body. So, but anyway, we're not talking about my son. We're talking about the documentary Everybody. And I was talking about how for the first 15 or 20 minutes, I thought I was going to be sick hearing about these stories, each of which is traumatic in its own way. It's River, Alicia, and Saifa. I can't remember how it's pronounced.
I think Saifa.
Saifa. Yep.
All very dynamic people. And I have to say, River Gaio is one of the most captivating people I've seen on screen in years. Could not take my eyes off them. And I had seen Alicia, is it Weigel? I can't remember her last name.
Yep.
I'd seen that interview that is in the movie where she's talking to that schmuck.
Oh,
and then she
God,
tells
that
him,
was so
Crowder.
infuriating.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't have tissues for you.
It was amazing.
Yeah, it was amazing. Yeah.
Well, it's kind of funny to see, I always love watching interviews like that when the subject of the interview, in that case, Alicia Weigel, somebody thinks, like Crowder, thinks he's going to get the upper hand, et cetera, et cetera. And it's like, Alicia Weigel's been dealing with this her entire life. Do you think that she's going to be cowed or scared by you fucking moron? I mean, just...
Yeah, he probably does think that because he's a scumbag.
Anyway, but I did think that this was... I just really... enjoy is not the right word, I don't think, for a movie like this, but I really thought it was captivating, and I think all three, we'll just call them leads, even though it's a documentary, because they are. All three leads are really compelling, and I thought it was really cool to see River Gaio being in acting with Joe Morton.
Yes!
In,
I love that.
It was some kind of Shakespeare. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thought that was cool, and I think that there was something else I was going to say that I can't remember. Oh, David Reimer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I remember seeing that story on NBC when it came out. So I must have been either in college or just out of college or something like that. And I just remember at the time thinking, oh, this poor person who went through this thing. And then when you hear, you hear it in the story that a surgical mistake led his mother to seek out John Money, who I don't really know. I'm sure he's long gone because he's an old man in the 90s, but like that fucking psycho. Just like, this is just one of those things that if I start talking about it or thinking about it too much, I just get mad. A combination of angry and sad, And it's like, I can't remember which of the leads says this, we want to stop having these surgeries forced on us. I think it's Alicia Weigel who's like, and then you've got trans kids who, by the way, are not having surgeries at that young age. Yeah, she's absolutely right. And it's like, I just didn't, I know that people, we'll just keep it to the United States because that's kind of what this movie does. I know that Americans, generally speaking, are shitheads. But like the way that we have, I can't say we because I don't want to include myself in this. The way that some people have decided to demonize drag shows or trans people or whatever, I just don't understand the fear and or hate. I just don't get it. Well, that's my soapbox. Anyway. I mean, what? I'm sorry that somebody, decided that they were a different gender. Oh, that affects you so much. Fuck off.
It's because Republicans will wield anything they can, and they'll
Yes,
move on to the
they
next
will.
the next thing.
Mhm.
If they can't get people on board with racism, they'll move on to abortion. If they can't get people on board with abortion, they'll move on to queer rights and trans rights. So yeah. Anyway, that's a whole other side thing. But I am glad that you brought that up, Dave, because it is so integrally intertwined, and it is absolutely absurd that people think that trans kids are having surgeries. None of them are. You cannot have surgery until you're 18. And the fact that you have to have notes from doctors and you have to have notes from a psychiatrist or a therapist, like there are so many people do not realize how many hoops you have to jump through as a trans person to change your name, let alone get on T or get on estrogen or have surgeries. And there's multiple, like people do not understand the steps at all. And the only thing that trans kids want to do is have puberty blockers so they have time to think about what they'd like to do with their lives and their bodies. That's it. That's all it is. But yet, if you're an intersex kid, that decision is taken away from you and made for you, and it is forced on you what gender you are going to be just by a doctor looking for 2 seconds at your genitalia. And it doesn't take into account what your internal organs are or your hormones or anything. It's disgusting and it's absurd. It is such hypocrisy of the highest order. Oh my God. Now I'm getting pissed. Anyway, Evan, what did you think about the documentary?
I also found this incredibly captivating. I think the subjects of the documentary are dynamic people. I think their stories are both heartbreaking and inspiring. I think the documentary does a really effective job of showing you their lives and showing the horrible things that happened to them, the medical traumas that were inflicted on them, and the unwanted surgeries and things, and how that really messed them up, but also how it inspired them to help fight for other people in this situation and turn their anger and trauma into activism. And I love that the film shows kind of both sides of that coin. I was not familiar with the story of David Reimer and the botched circumcision and was Dr. John Money. I wasn't familiar with any of that, so I was glad that the documentary delved into that. And I was just horrified and just infuriated by this one guy's opinion, dictating all of the medical treatment of intersex people and kind of forcing people into this binary dynamic. As a future parent, this documentary, I feel like, was tailor-made to me as an audience member because it just gave me a lot to think about in terms of bodily autonomy. And, in these situations, these three main people all had loving parents who cared about them a great deal and were trying to do right by their children and were, unfortunately led astray by bad medical advice. They were trying to do right by their kids and trying to do something that they thought was helping them, not realizing that they were doing horrible things that were traumatizing them. It really just gave me a lot to chew on and just think about, like, bodily autonomy is just so important. And, if I found myself in this position, I would certainly wouldn't be making any snap decisions. I would certainly be letting things play out and figure out what my kid wants and involving them in these discussions and not just doing things, that have irreversible, effects. And even hearing about David Reimer and how he went back and had all these other painful surgeries just really to try and just get right and feel right in his own body just really fucking broke my heart. There's a lot of heartbreaking stuff in there. Just really brutal, but like really important conversations and important things to think about. And I just think it's compelling. It's all really well done. And, getting back to my point earlier, I love that at the end, we see the joy. We see that these people have come to love and accept themselves, and they're out there, trying to help other people. And I love that it ends on this, joyous kind of everybody's goofing around and dancing around together in front of the camera. That was just kind of the perfect way to end after the kind of emotional journey of this documentary. So I just thought this was an incredible documentary. Another great one by Julie Cohen.
I also love in the end credits that along with the joy, you get every single person on the crew's pronouns. And I love that.
Yes.
And you never see that. You never see that in a film. And I love that. And I've seen it on film websites for like very small independent films, but I've never seen it in the credits of a film. Certainly not a mainstream film by a mainstream studio. And I would actually love it if that continued. Like not just in a queer film or a film on intersex people, but just on all films. I think it's great. I think it's important to acknowledge pronouns. But I agree with you, Evan. It is such a great ending, especially it is important to remember joy, especially considering how heavy this documentary is. I don't have anything additional to add really that you guys haven't already said. I agree with everything you both have said. I love Julie Cohen as a filmmaker. I love her Julia Child documentary that she did with Betsy West and her Ruth Bader Ginsburg documentary that she did with Betsy West. I think she has a really sharp eye for documentary filmmaking, and her documentaries are always nuanced and sensitive. And this one in particular has such a lovely thread of empathy running throughout. And so much of that is, of course, because of the three leads, because as you both have said, they're extremely dynamic, captivating, riveting people who do a lot of public speaking and are very comfortable doing so and very comfortable advocating for themselves and for others. But I think the part of the great footage is, of course, from the documentarian who's interviewing. And I think that that's a big part of it. What questions are being asked and how is this being edited? And I think that this film is done in such an exceptionally sensitive and empathetic way that is really impactful. And I think it's important. I think this is an absolute must-see film for everyone. Yeah. Everyone needs to see this because so many people do not know about intersex people. They do not know about the struggles they go through. And I think it's important for intersex people to see too that, you know, there are so many intersex people out there. So I think for all of it, this is just, for all those reasons, this is a must-see film. This film, it enraged me, broke my heart. It was uplifting. It was all of the emotions. It ran the complete emotional gamut. But it's such an important film. And I think everything that you said, Evan, about bodily autonomy is so true. And one of the things that we haven't mentioned that I will say I think was really nice to see too, because there's so much negativity, and rightfully so. I think it's nice when Saifa and Alicia are talking to the mother who has an intersex child and they're asking her questions, and she's like, oh yeah, they came to me and said, you know, what do you want to do? And, you know, we're waiting and we're going to let, you know, the child tell us what they want. And they were both like, whoa, like that was just such a shock because that's not what their experiences were. And that's not what most people's experiences are. And I really hope that that is a trend in the medical community that continues because it is so important. It is so important for people to tell us what their gender is. And, you know, I know someone who is, they have a child and they let their child tell them what their gender was. They gave them a gender neutral name and everything was gender neutral. And I think that that's a really fascinating way of doing it too. I don't know if everybody can do that, but I think that's a really fascinating possibility. And so I think these conversations are so critical, so important. Autonomy is so important. And I love that this documentary exists and that we're having these conversations as hard as they are, and they're necessary.
Totally. Yeah. It's a lot of good content here, a lot of things to think about. Very educational. So yes. I agree. It's a must-see on so many different fronts, but at the bare minimum, coming in and learning more about intersex people and their struggles, I think this was incredibly eye-opening for me as someone, you know, is like, you know, ally to many, but like this is just a subject that I just had no real education on. So I'm glad that I watch it from that perspective.
Yeah, I think the only time I'd ever heard about intersex people in any way, I don't even want to use the word significant. There was a story thread on ER about it once. about somebody who came into the ER with some sort of trauma, and they discovered while treating that trauma that this person was intersex but didn't know it. So that's like, I don't know. When was ER on? When did that end? 15 years ago? 20 years ago?
It's like the 90s and the early 2000s.
Yeah.
I also want to throw out there to everybody, stay away from the IMDb page for this because it is getting one-bombed by presumably a bunch of right-wing assholes.
Oh,
So,
lovely. How great.
yeah, it's a delight because I looked at it and was like 4.7. That can't be right. And then you see it's got like 1 million ones, and you just know that's because, I mean, think about it this way. This is coming out on Friday. We're recording this on a Wednesday. The movie's not out yet. So
Right. And how many of those people actually went to see this?
I'm going to go
seriously.
with 1 out of 162. Those are both random numbers.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to make a broad sweeping statement on the entire country, but as all three of us went to press screenings, and the one I went to was also open to the public, and it was in a huge theater, and I want to say maybe a third of the theater was filled, and that is not normal. That is not normal because when press screenings are open to the public, those things are packed because people want to see free
Generally.
movies. So the fact that this is not filled, I'm sure that other screenings elsewhere in the country were also not filled. So that just speaks more to your point, Dave, about getting review bombed, that there's no way in hell these people saw the film yet.
I mean, and this is maybe a little inside baseball, but I mean, the screening that Dave and I went to, we were among just a couple of press people also. So it's just like, you know, there's a lot, not enough people watching this movie and talking about it, period, whether they're press or public.
Yeah, there were quite a few press at my screening, I will say that. So maybe a lot of the people went to the one I was at. It's possible. But yes, but you're probably right. It's probably not enough people. Not enough. More need to see it. So, yeah. Well, do we have any other thoughts on the film?
No, I don't. Go see it. That's my thought.
Yeah. It broke my heart when they were talking about how everyone made them feel so shameful about their own bodies and how they had to hide this even from other people in their family. And just hearing about that really got to me. Like, especially I think when Alicia Weigel was talking about some of the stuff that was like, you know, her own brother didn't even know. And then like, also it really grossed me out, the kind of stuff they were talking about when like doctors were like, oh, well, you should like do these things to your body to make sure you're like ready to have sex with your husband. Like not even like considering, oh, gee, maybe this person isn't straight, you know? Ugh. And it just, I don't know. It just speaks to the other larger systemic issues in this country, which include, you know, sexualizing children, which just grosses me out. Just gross, nasty.
I know all these people are worried about, you know, having to explain trans people. It's like, well, you got to explain fucking straight people too. Jesus Christ. I mean,
oh no, don't you explain that. That's just normal.
Yeah, that's exactly. You've just made my, I know you were being ironic, but you've made my point for me.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. Yeah, something that I think that this film also touches on, which is great, is that there are intersex trans people, and that's something that, you know, if you're a trans person who's intersex, you're kind of dealing on both of those fronts, but they're really not even separate fronts. They're the same issue. It's just our society is treating it hypocritically. Anyway, oh my God, it just makes me want to tear my hair out. Yeah, it's so infuriating. It's so horrible. But Evan, it's as disgusting as it is to think about sexualizing children. You're 100% right, because that is what they're doing. And like, right. It's so repugnant anyway.
Yeah. Well, it just goes back to the, you know, the bathroom arguments where, you know,
oh God,
people are trying to police bathrooms like, oh, well, a man could go into a woman's bathroom and perv out in there. And it's like, no, you're the only one thinking about that. Right. That's you. You're the perv.
You know,
everyone else is trying to go to the bathroom.
Like, I don't fucking care who's in the bathroom with me. I'm sorry. I have been in the bathroom with people of other genders, and no weird shit is happening in the bathroom. I don't know what people are thinking happens in the bathroom, but none of that weirdo-ness. Like, oh my God.
No.
You know,
And the other stuff in bathrooms, people are both consenting to. It's like if people having sexual encounters in the bathroom.
Oh, well, yeah,
there's
that's
people
fine.
that are consenting to that
Yeah,
crap.
exactly.
It's like
Right. And they're doing it either in the bathroom by themselves, like, or in a stall. Like, it's fine. Like, it's fine. Who cares?
I know. The thing that
oh my God,
I can't believe we've gone down this rabbit hole because it just makes all three of us so angry. But I can't believe that these fucking idiots who are transphobic don't think to themselves for a moment like, hey, maybe we're the ones sexualizing children. I mean,
oh no, they don't think that.
No. And the few who have are just like, nah. I mean, I don't understand why you care so much about children's pee-pees and hoo-hoos. So I just said that, by the way, because that's the way they talk about it in my mind.
Totally. Well, the fact that, the whole issue with trans kids in sports, which is so disgusting and appalling, and that there are states and counties where they want to do checks on children to see if they're really trans or really cis. Like, it's revolting. It is revolting. Mm-hmm. What are you doing? What the hell are you doing?
Violating somebody's bodily autonomy. That's what they're doing.
Yes, which is, that is what this country is founded on. And it is a abhorrent practice that has continued for centuries. Let's keep going with it. Jesus Christ. Oh my God. I want to lose my mind.
Yeah.
It's so
maybe we should bring this around.
I know.
Yeah,
so
sorry I launched
horrible.
us down another tirade, but it just this felt like it was important to mention.
No, it is. It is. It is important.
You're right.
And it's just awful. But that's the great thing about this film is that it doesn't shy away from that. It talks about so many of the nuances and facets of this topic and of these people's lives. And it is a wonderful documentary and it is a must-see. So like Dave said, go see it. All right. Well, let's recap. So Nimona is on Netflix today as of Friday, June 30th. And would you guys say see it or skip it?
Yeah, see it. I would say see it.
Your mileage may vary.
All right. And I would enthusiastically say see it immediately. So, and I think it's safe to say. So, and everybody is also out in theaters today, Friday, June 30th. I think it's safe to say all three of us would recommend it enthusiastically.
Hell yeah.
Yes. I'm so glad. All right. Well, we want to give a huge thank you to our editor, Otto Clammer. Otto, thank you so much for making us sound so fabulous week after week.
Thank you, Otto.
Thanks, Otto.
You can find Spoiler Piece Theater anywhere you get podcasts. We are all over the place at whatever platform you prefer. You can also find Spoiler Piece at our website, spoilerpiece.com. You can follow us on social media. We are all over the place. We're at Spoiler Piece on Facebook, Instagram, Letterboxd, TikTok, you name it, we're there. So come follow us, say hello. If you want to get in touch with us, you can send us an email at spoilerpiece@gmail.com, or you can give us a call
at 86221-PEACE.
Leave us a voicemail message, text us, let us know Nimona's amazing, or no, I had tonal problems with it too, or yes, everybody is a must-see documentary. Let us know what you think. We love hearing your thoughts. We do get quite a bit of feedback on Twitter especially, but we love hearing what you think on any platform and any venue. So reach out to us. We love your questions and your comments. If you like the show, please consider rating and reviewing us. It really helps us get the word out about the podcast. You can go to ratethispodcast.com/spoilerpiece. It will take you to your preferred platform of choice. You can also just go directly to Apple Podcasts, our Spoiler Piece page there, and that helps us out a lot. And Spotify. Rate us all over the place. We love it. Thank you so much. And if you really, really like the show, like really, really, consider becoming a patron if you're not already. For $5 a month, you get access to weekly bonus episodes like this week where we talked about the monthly poll winner, which was The Adventures of Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. We had a great conversation and we have monthly polls, which you get to vote in if you're a patron. And you also get to access over 300 of our bonus episodes in our back catalog. So, and if you are already a patron, you know the fun that you're having. So thank you. And
I like that.
Thanks. We're so grateful to all of you listeners and to our patrons. My name is Megan Kearns. I write film reviews for Edge Media Network. I'm a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association, and I'm a member of Gallica. You can follow me on Twitter at OpinionSWorld or on Instagram and Letterboxd at TheOpinionS.
My name is Dave Riedel. I write for the Chicago Reader. I am on, where am I? I'm Dave Sees Movies on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd. And there's something else I'm supposed to say. I'm a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association.
There you go. Nailed it.
Thanks.
And my name is Evan Crean. I'm co-chair of the Boston Online Film Critics Association and co-author of your 80s movie guide, The Better Living. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd as Real Recon, and that's real as in film reel.
Thanks, everybody, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.